Okay, let's talk about DeFi. You see these yields, right? 20%, 50%, heck, even 100% APY. It makes your bank savings account look like a total joke. And it's incredibly tempting. But, behind those huge numbers, there's a really critical question. And if you don't know the answer, well, it can cost you literally everything. You've probably heard the saying in crypto, and it is brutally honest. If you can't figure out where the yield is coming from, you are the yield. And what that really means is you're just the last one holding the bag. You're the exit liquidity for somebody smarter. So in this explainer, we're going to make sure that's not you. So yeah, let's just cut to the chase and ask the single most important question in all of DeFi. Where does this money actually come from? All right, let's get into it. Look, before we can even begin to spot the fakes and the straight-up Ponzi schemes, you got to understand how the real protocols, the legit ones, actually generate returns. It really all comes down to three main ways. We'll call them the three pillars of yield. So first up, we've got staking, and you can think of this as the absolute bedrock, the foundation for a lot of these blockchains. When you lock up or stake your tokens, you're not just letting them sit there. You're actually helping to secure the whole network, validating transactions, and for doing that, for providing that crucial service, the protocol pays you. It's a reward for your work, essentially. And what's super important to notice here is the range of these returns. I mean, they're realistic, right? This is not some get-rich-quick thing. Take Ethereum. It's a beast, an absolute titan of security, and it's giving you a solid 3 to 4%. Then you've got something like Solana, a bit higher at 6 to 8%. And yeah, you can find higher yields, like with Cosmos, but that comes with its own set of risks. The main point, though, is that these are all real returns, driven by actual economic activity. Okay, pillar number 2 is lending, and this one should sound pretty familiar to, well, everybody. You deposit your assets into a decentralized money market, and other people can borrow them. And just like a bank, they pay interest. You, as the depositor, get a piece of that interest. I mean, it's pretty much the oldest game in finance, right? It's just been rebuilt to run on code you can actually see, instead of inside some black box at a bank. And this gives you a pretty good idea of the landscape. You've got these major players, Aave, Compound, they're well-known, they're battle-tested. For something like stablecoins, you're usually looking at somewhere between 2 and 8% APY, and that number goes up and down, right? It all depends on how many people want to borrow. But, and this is a big but, don't get lazy here, it is not risk-free. Smart contract bugs, Oracle failures, they can happen. They do happen. And that brings us to our third and final pillar: providing liquidity, or being an LP. Now, the easiest way to wrap your head around this is to imagine you're a tiny little market maker. You take a pair of tokens, let's say ETH and a stablecoin, and you deposit them into a pool. Now, whenever traders come along and swap between those two, you get a little slice of the fee. You're the one making the market work. You're basically powering the whole engine of decentralized trading. All right, so we've covered the real deal, legitimate ways to earn yield. Now we're getting to what is, without a doubt, the most important part of this whole thing. This is where we learn how to spot the difference between a real, sustainable strategy and a ticking time bomb. Okay, this slide right here, this is everything. Seriously, on one side, you've got real yield. This comes from actual economic activity. We're talking fees from people trading, interest from people borrowing. It's sustainable. Then, on the other side, you have Ponzinomics. And here, the yield is just being printed out of thin air. The protocol is just minting new inflationary tokens and giving them to you. This only works as long as more and more new people keep piling in to buy up those tokens. The second that music stops, the whole thing goes to zero. Poof. So here's the takeaway. This is the one question you need to burn into your brain to keep yourself safe. Just ask this: would this yield still be here if the protocol stopped printing its own token tomorrow? If the answer to that question is no, then you're not an investor. You're a player in a very, very dangerous game of musical chairs. And you don't want to be the one left standing when the music stops. Okay, so now that you have that question locked in, let's give you a proper investigator's toolkit. Think of these as the massive, flashing red flags that should set off every alarm bell in your head. First up, and this is the biggest one, any APY over 100%. I mean, come on, when you see a number like that, your first reaction shouldn't be greed. It should be deep, deep skepticism. You have to stop and ask yourself, where on earth is that value supposed to be coming from? There's just no real economic engine that can support that. It's almost always fueled by just printing tokens that are about to be worthless. And here's the rest of your checklist. Like, is the yield being paid in some weird, unknown token you've never heard of? Because that's probably going to dump by 90%.
Is the strategy so ridiculously complicated that you couldn't explain it to a friend if you tried? Is there no public audit of the code? Is the team a bunch of anonymous anime characters? Look, any one of these is a big warning sign, but all of them together, that's not a red flag, that's a guaranteed recipe for getting absolutely wrecked. Okay, enough of the doom and gloom. Let's switch gears and talk about how to do this the right way. How can you build a smart, prudent strategy and actually start earning some sustainable, long-term yield in DeFi without losing your shirt? So, here's a pretty simple, risk-managed way to get started. Step 1, just start with the safest play on the board. Stake blue-chip assets like ETH or SOL. Step 2, once you're comfortable, maybe add some stablecoin lending on those big battle-tested platforms we talked about earlier. Step 3, now listen, only after you really truly understand a tricky concept called impermanent loss, and we'll get to that, only then should you even think about being a liquidity provider. And the golden rule, step 4, which trumps everything else. If you can't explain where the yield comes from in a single sentence, just walk away. Avoid it, period. And that really gets to the heart of the philosophy here, right? Stop chasing these insane, flashy numbers. Boring yields, they compound. That 5% real APY over 5 or 10 years, that turns into serious wealth. A 500% APY from a Ponzi? Well, that almost always trends towards exactly one number, 0. Hey, remember I mentioned that impermanent loss thing a second ago? Well, it's the single biggest trap in providing liquidity. It's this hidden, really counterintuitive risk that can take a huge, juicy APY and actually turn it into a painful loss. So next time, we're going to do a deep dive and break it all down. We're going to demystify it completely, so you're definitely not going to want to miss that one.